Okay, Liam, how are things at Lincoln City at the moment? Very busy off the pitch in spite of very little on the pitch.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Michael. I think that's the one thing I can say that despite there being a lack of on-field activity, off the field it's a very busy time for the football club. Various different meetings, both with the EFL and internally, along with the board. So a lot of scenario planning, a lot of new legal agreements to get our heads around, things like that. But yeah, busy time, but certainly an experience that we won't want to have gone through. But hopefully, the whole plan with the football club is that we're gearing up to deal with this and be positive throughout this process and come out of it as strong as we possibly can.
It strikes me that the I've been talking to a lot of people inside football, including yourself, and there's a lot of thought going into how, whenever the resumption comes, whether it's with a new season or whether it's playing the existing season, there's a lot of thought going into this to try and get it right and obviously not endanger people's lives at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there. There are so many options and permutations that are available and may or may not play out. And I think the one thing that we've always got to be aware of is the wider challenges society are facing. As much as we think football has a role to play in helping the country get through these difficult times, we've just got to be aware of the unintended consequences and the knock-on effects. Should we be able to get games on and deal with the bubble that is football? So real positive conversations. We've got some real some of the best brains and the best minds working on this, and we're certainly trying to navigate our way through this. But I think once you solve one problem or one challenge and another one presents themselves. So certainly an interesting time, challenging and equally we're certainly trying to do our very best to serve the fans and the football club as well as we can through careful, considered planning and thinking.
And when would you expect to have some news for supporters? Not necessarily a definitive, this is when it's going to be, but perhaps more an update of where the Football League is. It seems the Premier League, understandably, are perhaps taking precedence to some extent with the government, and whatever happens with the Premier League might then feed into the Football League.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt. Let's not kid ourselves. The Premier League and the Championship are two major leagues, within this country, and their commercial landscape's very different. So, whilst we're all equal as football clubs, we've got to be respectful and mindful to the overall position. So, yeah, the Premier League and the Championship to some degree are leading these conversations, but that doesn't mean to say that our thoughts aren't being considered or aren't very much at the forefront of everybody's minds and importance at this moment in time. I think in terms of giving anything definitive, I still think, if I'm honest, we're quite away from that. Probably because, or most likely, that's government led. We have weekly meetings with the EFL. Normally they're on a Tuesday for League One. This week we've just had to move that back to Thursday. So certainly myself and Clive Nates will be having a more substantial update from the EFL. But majority of that is just scenario playing conversations based on previous data or elements that we've asked people to consider and discuss and getting feedback. But I think the one thing I can say, it's the most united and together that I've ever seen clubs in one league, and stories from colleagues working in the Premier League have been that it's the first time ever that they've been able to get all clubs to ever agree to certain solutions or certain opportunities. So yeah, I think it's definitely we're starting to see football come together to try and find solutions, but I don't think we're quite ready yet to be making public statements, just because of the number of options that are available.
You have put out on the club website today confirming what we have talked about before about furloughing the players. How difficult a decision was that? And was that in a way forced on you when the government, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, extended the period of lockdown? Did that kind of force your hand a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first and foremost, we've got to be socially responsible, and we've got to, the intentions of the coronavirus job retention scheme and the government grant fund, what was that was there for. Equally, from our employees' point of view, we've got a responsibility to them to look after their interests as well. So, all things considered, we feel that the not only the coronavirus job retention scheme is is an appropriate fund for us to be accessing at this moment in time. It's a lifeline, if I'm honest with you, to the football club, and it's going to be an imperative resource as we look to preserve, and mitigate our costs, whilst frankly put, the football club is earning very little, if any, revenue. So it was a difficult decision. I think we considered it very carefully, and we were made sure that we were diligent in our considerations for that. But yeah, as you've seen from the announcement earlier today, we've recently furloughed the players, first team players and academy staff. So effectively that leaves around 9 to 10 staff that are currently transacting and doing all the business of Lincoln City at this moment in time.
And on the player side of things as well, you had hinted that there may be some deferral of pay within their payment as well. Has that happened? Is that about to happen?
Yeah, so we've worked within the PFA guidelines and the EFL conversations that they've had. Again, as a club, we felt that was most appropriate. Each organisation, each member club is obviously entitled to do what as they wish in agreement with their players. But we felt at this moment in time that the conversations between the EFL and PFA, whilst they've not necessarily been productive in the long term and tackling some of the long term challenges, in the short term it was just felt that was apt and that was right for Lincoln City and the players.
Has that been a hard conversation with players? Because I know some people, even though it's Lincoln City, will look at them and say relatively they're well paid, but the reality is we all have budgets in our lives, and if you're trying to pay mortgages and all those sorts of things, I know furlough means that some of the pay is coming in, but deferring pay as well might for some be a difficult decision.
No, and I think that you're absolutely right. And listen, again, I'm being very careful. Nobody at Lincoln City Football Club, be it a player or any of the senior executives, should be pleading poverty. That's not the case. But the players do have mortgages to pay. They've got food to put on the table, and they've got families to look after. And yes, we've seen the reports in the press and various things around some of the potential salaries people. And I think the one thing that we've got to just be really clear on is the top end of the game and even the Championship. Things look very different compared to what things look like at League One level. And then certainly within the squad of Lincoln City, there's equally as you would expect within any squad, there's a significant kind of spread of salaries that goes on there. So we view it and we believe the approach we took is everybody has individual circumstances. We've had one-to-one conversations with the players, and we've each player is an individual, rather than expecting and demanding that we have a group deal that is one size fits all. And hopefully that we believe that's the right way to do it. I'm not saying that clubs who've taken the alternative approach are wrong in doing that, but I think at this moment in time we'd certainly rather look and work with people on a one-to-one basis, understand them, their personal circumstances, and work collaboratively as we look to solve the challenges that we do have.
You took quite a big decision mid-season about budgets and about how where the football club was going in terms of the profile of player and the amount of money that players would be paid. Has that maybe put you in a better position to, whilst it will still be painful what's going to happen in the next few months, you're in perhaps a better position to cope with it?
Yeah, 100%. There's no denying of that, Michael. That is for sure. Obviously, what you will see as football, and the end of this season, comes closer upon us whenever that may be. But from a time point of view, we know we're getting close to those dates in a sense. I think what you will see is football wages and salaries will look very different, and there's a large number of out of contract players in the summer this year, and frankly put the football landscape and their new contracts are probably going to look very different to kind of terms and conditions that they may have been looking to in normal circumstances. So I think from our point of view, to have a core group of newly recruited players and equally have done the transactions that we did in January, that will absolutely help us in the medium term and equally in the short term. But I think equally what we've got to be mindful of is that as football is going to change over the coming weeks, month, year, whatever it looks like. So we've got to still be able to adapt and be flexible enough that we're able to look at the situation. January will no doubt be a stepping stone to whatever football looks like on the other side, but it's not the complete picture. And that's where Michael, Jez and the rest of the guys in the recruitment side are working, very diligently, and equally, a lot of work's going on in that area at this moment in time. And then equally, look, the other thing we've got to address here, because I'd rather, it's important that we address this, is obviously we've got a large number of players that are out of contract for Lincoln City, that, in regular circumstances, you'd be either looking to extend those contracts or be having those conversations right now. And I think the problem that we've got is, because we just don't know what football looks like, we're just not in a position to have those conversations. And the majority of the players, they understand that, but it's just a disconcerting time. It's a worrying time for them all. So I think that's where it goes back to saying, we're in this together. We're very much trying our best to think about this as people centred, but equally, as I've always maintained, the number one thing we've got to do as part of this is make sure Lincoln City Football Club is here, and everything that we're doing at this moment in time is for the best financial health of Lincoln City Football Club in the long run.
Perhaps one of the reasons why you're hoping to, whilst it will still be painful, be able to ride it out, is that you've got great support from the people of Lincoln. You've got a large number of season ticket holders at the moment, a large number of people who have already expressed and gone through the process of getting those season tickets for next season, but through no fault of your own, you've lost a whole string of home games. You don't know whether they're going to come back. You don't know whether people are going to be able to go into the grounds. It looks unlikely at this stage. What's your message to those supporters? So that I appreciate you've been advertising benefits of having season tickets, having the Imps rewind, but nonetheless, what's the message to those fans who've put that outlay in?
Yeah, well, look, I think first of all, we're so grateful for their support. Ever since I've been at this football club, and obviously, prior to that, the support that we've always had from the wider community has been phenomenal, and we thank them for that. I think the most important thing that I can stress to them is, at this moment in time, that their support for the football club and purchasing through the early bird season ticket window, we're very aware that may have put financial pressures on them. We're very aware that it's a time where regular income streams may be affected. So I think this goes back to the point that we're very appreciative, but we understand that people are hurting too in many ways. So as a football club, as we try and navigate this, I think the one thing that we're very mindful of is the fact that yes, we're not in a great place, and there are business challenges, but equally we respect the fact that our fans are having the same things within their personal and private life, and probably their private finances. So their support more than ever, be that moral support or even the financial support through purchasing season tickets, or even through 50/50 tickets or merchandise. We really, more than ever, we very much respect and value that, and really appreciate the efforts that everybody's making, and it is only through that collaborative approach will we make it through this in some health, in a sense. So yeah, more than anything, just sincerely thank you for that support. It means the world to us. It really does.
And I guess similar message, people can see on the advertising board behind you, the club have got a lot of support from sponsors locally, and I guess it's a similar message to them for their ongoing support.
Yeah, 100%, and I think that's again where you look about what's taken Lincoln City from National League to where we are today. It has been that collaborative approach. We had a call similar to this with our partners and with lounge holders the other day, and when we came to the questions, the first question that we had from a well-known sponsor, it was Neil in Selenity, is how can we help? Is there any more we can do? And I think that spirit and that approach is something that we appreciate so much, and more than anything, it's that moral support. You can just feel the desire and that willingness and that want to help and to lend a hand, and it's those things, and it's those little interventions that really help get us through these challenging times. And look, there's no doubt that it is going to come down to pounds, shillings, and pence. That's what it is going to come down to. It's going to come down to the finances of this. But ultimately, I think the fans know the board that we have now, and Clive, and colleagues within Sportsvest, as well as the other directors and investors. So, what we're not going to be doing is we're not going to be making any knee-jerk reactions, but hopefully, we've got a track record of being very considered, thinking through our decisions, but rationally making sure that the football club is always the number one priority. But then everything that comes off of that is obviously we're very mindful of how every decision that we make may impact that, and sponsors are equally very much part of that, as well as fans that coming through the gates and in their droves and have supported us for many a year.
And finally, I'm sure people want me to ask how you and the staff, both those who are working, those on furlough, be they players or be they the behind-the-scenes staff, are bearing out. It's difficult for many people, in a mental health way, and I'm sure that's a big part of what you try and do to support both the staff you have working with you, but also those away on furlough as well.
No, and I think you're absolutely right, Michael. And I think this has probably been the hardest thing for me, as working in the industry that we're all in. We're the type of people, we're all kind of quite socially, active in a sense. We like, walking around the offices, getting to, talk to each other. So, I think this whole, this new way of working for ourselves, whilst it's very functional, you miss that human interaction. You just miss that ability to, to sit down with your colleagues over a cup of coffee and maybe even your lunch and just have those conversations. And I think it's a challenge for any business right now, is that mental well-being of their team members and equally, understanding what that looks like. So, hopefully, we've got provisions in place and various different little projects that are going on in the background that support our team members. But, you're absolutely right. The challenges that are coming for us as a business right now are in many angles. So, hopefully what does happen when we come through the other side of this pandemic is the fact that people feel that we've done this and we've worked through this in the fairest and most appropriate way. We've supported people, we've supported parts of our community, and I think my number one aim right now is that I think we all know that the football club is a pillar within the community that it serves, and our number one aim is that we survive this and we can play a role in rebuilding our communities as we come out of the other side. And I think, without sounding glib about this, the footballing side of things, the conversations that are going on with the EFL, they matter. But the most important thing is our people, our communities, and the fact that, we come out of this and thrive, and together we rebuild our communities and get back to, a way of life that we all enjoyed previous to this.